Good evening. This is Defacto Review, a weekly analysis of Mongolia's latest political, economic, and social issues by economist and columnist Mr. Jarasang.
Hello, everyone.
And I'll be your host, Tikshirult. This week we're discussing the Democratic Party leader elections, the plan to update the Constitution of Mongolia, and Mongolia's placement on the corruption index this year. So our first topic is a major election within the Democratic Party in Mongolia, which is the single largest opposition party in parliament. So according to their official statements, around 79,000 members of the 143,000 registered members voted online to choose the next leader for their party. And they chose Mr. Gambat, who is a member of parliament and a former Democratic Caucus leader in parliament. So second place was Mr. Kundata, who was a former member of parliament with 17,828 votes. So there's a lot of controversy going around it, as there was currently there are two leaders of the Democratic Party that are presented to the Supreme Court of Mongolia, and we're still waiting on the results. And also for the online elections, Mr. Kundata, alleged that the elections were illegal. So why do you think there's so much controversy around this topic within the Democratic Party?
Not only topic. This is around the Democratic Party. And I can also quote the other election happened 3 days before this one, 4 days actually before this election. On January 19th, the Democratic Party of Mongolia has held its National Congress and elected party's chairman. That chairman, out of 5 persons, one is a parliament member Odin Tuya, ex-parliament member Naran Tuya, Bayurtsokt, education minister Kantumur. So 4 persons were running, and MP, former MP Lo Kantumur, who was also minister for education, won because he got 152 votes. Bayurtsokt got 129 votes, and Naran Tuya got 12. Odin Tuya take away her name. So according to this whole things, some 300 votes were only accounted, unlike what you say about 79,000 for the next one, for another president, chairman of the party. Just for the last 2.5 years, we have 7 chairmen of this Democratic Party. Of one party, 7 chair. So it really clearly says how much strong as an institution this Democratic Party. And because its weakness as an institution, not only Democratic Party members suffer, all Mongolian nations, voters suffer, because we don't have practically strong opposition today in our society, in our political state situation. That's very bad, because democracy works only when you have a strong opposition, which is not the case of Mongolia. One. Secondly, it clearly shows Democratic Party and many other political parties, more or less only People's Party, is more close to the institution. The remaining, all political parties, include, first of all, this Democratic Party, unfortunately, has not formed as a strong institutions. Why? Because as I see the 7 elections almost inside of this Democratic Party for the last 2.5 years, they talk about the chairman, they talk about the stamp, letterhead of this Democratic Party. I don't see them talking about the values that democracy brought to this country, the values that was driving whole Democratic Party members. And they don't give critical, open, from their heart, opinion on each their leaders from time to time. So because they don't talk about the values, they just only talk about who is to be chairman, and so many candidates are there, it again shows that this is not strong, deep, value-based institution. The third, it says also the, I would say, very much realistic election structure in the country, voting system, both constituency, etc. Why? Because, for example, in Mongolia, we're supposedly to have parliamentarian system of governance, public governance. But actually we have semi-presidential system. Why? President has so many power. Without him, the court system, the justice system cannot be approved. Any leaders of the system, Supreme Court, only he needs to approve it after Parliament decisions. And he nominates all ambassadors who is representing the country outside. And also he's the head of the military force, armed force in the country. That's why, and he has a right also to submit a law draft. So altogether, the president power is a lot in the country. And secondly, also we saw president as kind of opposition, because whenever the parliament is taken by one party, the opposition party, president was coming usually, except the last time. Why? Because in 2021, at the presidential election, because this chaos, because this division inside of the Democratic Party, they got only 6% of votes, which is way less than even a Hung party candidate. So it clearly shows that we need to change this governance structure, making towards more parliamentarian system. The fourth I see is the constituency, because it's really, constituency is made in such a way that few people, the parliament is not equally representing the nation, the people. So that's why the parliament member is only taking care of own constituency from where he was elected. We call it even, we have the political jargon, say that constituency watering. They come there, give gifts, under many reasons, though by law they cannot do it, but they still do it. Under for example, the Lunar New Year coming, and they are giving a gift to the senior people, for example, etc., etc. And the fifth, the reason why all these things are happening is financing of political parties in the country. The one, we don't know how much, though we know somehow, there was in the media a certain figure that, for example, 2 billion MNT to donate to your political party to be a candidate for parliament member, for example. I mean, he did, according to the media, social media. So all these reasons give really the picture why we need and why we need to change the constitutions, and what is the result in case of the Democratic Party.
You've mentioned the importance of having a very strong opposition party for democracy. So, what do you think that the Democratic Party should do to present a bigger, more challenging opposition to the People's Party, which are in power today?
Well, that's something they have to decide, and they don't find the right way to get this kind of consolidation of party members on the same value, on the same person, etc. And hopefully they will do it very soon. It's better, because it's now a very short time, only less than 1.5 year to the next another election in 2024. But the ruling party may change the constitution and they may call early election even in this year, in 2023. It will be even bad, considering the division, chaos in the Democratic Party. There will be not good solution for not only Democratic Party but also for all Mongolian voters. But another thing, more positive thing I see is the Hungnam may have a more chance to be opposition.
They had a lot of steam in the last presidential election.
Yes, on the background of this weak Democratic Party, Hungnam is winning and will be winning more seats in the parliament. That's how I see.
So you've talked about the possibility of having a new constitution before the next election. So last year, the Prime Minister of Mongolia, Mr. Jong-il, created a working group to update our current constitution, which was adopted in 1992. It was headed by Mr. Inkbayer, who was a former president of Mongolia, and it also consists of leaders of 4 other parties.
Smaller parties.
Smaller parties, yeah. So why do you think that that we want to change the constitution that we've been following for the last 30 years?
Again, it's kind of continuation of our first topic. I told the reasons why what does it mean when we don't have a right constituency, for example, representing all nations. There is President Inkbayer brought a version of constitutions, and they call it new constitutions, because they say that it is more than 35% of content changed. That's why, according to the rule, they need to call it new constitutions. And he said that in fact it's new constitutions because the constitutions of 1992 was for transition of one political party system to a multi-party system. And now we need to have not the party-centered constitutions. We need now people-centered constitutions, which sounds very logical on his side. But there is a clause which caused a huge outrage of society. That is, he suggested two chambers parliament. One is upper and lower, and the upper one is consisting of 75, the other is 90%. In the 75 is elected by voters, proportional voters. Majoritarian voters, because the other one is proportional. But he added 15 persons to be nominated by the president of Mongolia. And those, he brought certain figures, names, mostly all former presidents, former prime ministers to be among this 15, which caused a huge outrage because it's kind of a Lord's chamber of the UK and many other countries, which is not actually representing the very spirit of democracy. In democracy, they should be elected, representing certain people. And now they were going to be presenting all the president. And also another change was president to be elected from these two chambers. And president is to be more symbolic, not like now. So these causes certain big resistance in society. However, the head of cabinet secretary, Mr. Amarbhai Solang, said that we did not ask to make any new constitutions. One, plus any constitutions to be discussed and approved by their people, not by one political party, in particular when just one political party is in power now. So I think he made a good argument. But however, he stressed on the need of really changing the political structure. In order to do that, you need to make another amendment in the constitutions. However, that amendments will be discussed. We should say that parallelly that the parliament is organizing the consultative ballot, and people will select some 1,500 people, as we discussed last time, and they will be asked questions on the basis of the questionnaire. They will formulate certain draft, which will be discussed again when all these people who is selected by chance statistic method, they all around country representing the geography, ages, all the parts of society. So, however, now also another opposition to this group. They say that, why this only 1,500 people to make decisions on are we representative democracy, are we consultative democracy, are we a direct democracy? So there is a big political debate on that. And people not happy because the Inkbayar version of the constitutions can be in mind of the ruling party to put on that consultative ballot, which is not the case, according to Amr Bay Sagalan, Mr. Amr Bay Sagalan, who is the head of chief staff, chief secretary of cabinet. So that's the situation.
So a lot of other countries, when they do decide to adopt a new constitution, it goes through a public voting period. So if we were to propose a change for the constitution, do you think it'd be better to go with that method of consultative ballots, or just let every citizen vote for?
It's kind of a referendum to be made somehow, either in this way or that way. But it used to be kind of a referendum reflecting the majority of wishes of the population, voters in particular. And the voters now understand one thing, that we need now very equal representation. Why? According to the former speaker, Onchugdorj, for example, how about having 120 seats in the parliament? Why? So we got 72 seats in 1990, earlier 1990s, because we had a population of 2.5 million. Now we have a 3.5 million, so accordingly, proportionally, let's increase not twice, but from 76 to 120. And he's suggesting that now we should change the frame, constituency distribution, constituency division. Why? Because now it goes by IMACs. And some IMAC has, for example, Bolgan IMAC has, for one parliament member, 40,000 people. So one parliament member representing 40,000 Bolgan people. Then Hinti IMAC, one parliament member represents 16,000 only. And there is an example of two districts in Ulaanbaatar city, constituency. Constituency number 63, a parliament member represents 41,000. But the next one, in 68 constituency, a parliament member represents only 22,000. In that way, some part of administrative unit is overrepresented, some part is underrepresented, like Ulaanbaatar city. Ulaanbaatar city is half of the population, or consequently half the voters. Yet, it is represented by 1/3 of the current parliament members, which you cannot say it is equal representation. So, according to this new idea, in this case of Mr. Onchugdorj, I thought it's a good idea having 10 constituency, each has 12 constituency, each has 10 parliament members, partially proportional, partially majoritarian, by party names or by individual names. I think it's so far the better version of any proposal, even nothing to compare with the Inkbayar proposal. So that's the reason why we need to make these amendments in this or that way.
So there's also reports of President Inkbayar delivering the draft law, the draft constitutions to various embassies of other countries here in Ulaanbaatar, and they were very confused and consulted with the foreign minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs. Why do you think that happened in the first place?
Interesting. I saw his speech at the press conference. He said that, well, first of all, any constitution is much better to have support by the foreign countries. And he actually distributed his version as a version of, because he is the head of the working group of the parliament, nominated by the prime minister, and his version, which was not consulted with own party, coming to the other all embassies in the country is a little bit premature. I think this kind of, if it is government foreign relations issue, then it's better to go officially through the foreign ministry. So I think it is not only this time issue. It's many cases where the foreign policy goes through many doors and more confusing than solving issues.
Let's move on to our final topic for this week. Transparency International releases the corruption index for every country yearly. And this year, it was reported that Mongolia ranked 116 out of 180 countries, jumping back 6 spots. And this was the worst in a 5-year stretch, in the past 5 years. And why do you think that is? And more importantly, what exactly is the corruption index, the corruption perceptions index? Because it says in the name it's perceptions, but could it also represent actual corruption in each country?
Mongolia falls 6 places. It was 112 now, 110th, now it's 116 out of 180 countries. Along with, in the same bracket with Algeria, Zambia, Salvador, Philippines, and Ukraine. I find that this corruption presumption index 2023 is reflecting 2022, partially 2021, because it's based on polls from businesses, particular citizens, which presume they imagine how they think the corruption is level. So basically, 2 reasons. One is where in many countries where the state-owned enterprises are coming up, their share in the economy, when their wealth comes, the corruption just goes down. But why? Because state-owned enterprise usually it is not owned by private individuals. There are more spaces to steal, to be corrupt. Secondly, how much that country is fulfilling obligations by the UN different conventions, and those who is not doing what have agreed or by the conventions that they have signed, usually they go down in this index. Okay, this tourism. But having said that, this year the 6 places backward going is mostly connected with the current and intensive measures made by the current government of Oyun Irden to combat corruption. And it is last and this year, 2 years, 21, 22, where the most corrupt cases of Mongolian history have revealed, finally disclosed, like case of Irdenet 49%, where a private company took this share with public money. Looks like now they are recognizing and now they are saying now the truth. Also this coal theft issue, and then the railways issue. Then now it's coin issues. So it is connected with the stronger actions of the current government. So I do expect it comes up because the people see now more and more corruption, deeper and wider. But for the first time now, 2 parliament members are now being convicted, and they are asking the parliament to strip off their immunity, which was not happening before. One of them already voluntarily had resigned from the parliament member by this time. So I think it is not that, to look at it from that perspective is not so bad. And it means, after I said that, there is one strong reasons all time kept us in that index in the back places was law enforcement of Mongolia. Okay, which is still the case, but however, from even last month, our justice system or court system is looking like more in line of working with the government, unlike before, because there are many criminal cases or corruption cases investigated and defined by the anti-corruption agency, went to the court and never goes through. Half of them don't go through in Mongolia. Now this case looks like will be more down. The first thing always caused us back. The second thing is still Mongolian political party financing is still dark horse. Nobody knows. They say every time they will renew Mongolian political parties law, which never do, for already more than 15 years. The third, I think, is now they will, the high-level politicians, public officers will not only report their income, as they have been doing for years now, but they will now to report their expenses. If you cannot explain your expenses, then it's like in Singapore, and also your property you cannot explain where it is coming from, then it will be regarded as a corrupt case, corruption. Then lastly, there was an idea which on the air is staying very long. This is to have a specialized court for corruption. We have administration court, but now how about having corruption court? And even more than that, that corruption court had to be a foreigner. To me, for example, if that would be more clear case. Hong Kong has foreigner judges, for example. They finally, still what is missing in Mongolia is a law protecting whistleblowers and investigative journalists. We talk about that for many years, but nothing is moving in this directions. So I think if the current government goes in their same speed, same enthusiasm against corruption, and plus they do these 4 things I just thought: political party financing, enforcement of the court system, the law, and the reporting their expenses, and adopting a law protecting whistleblowers, then Mongolia will have a good chance to go forward in that inception, in that, like Denmark, Singapore, from the region.
Let's hope we get there sooner than later.
We have to, because this is the only big obstacles that obstructing our progress in Mongolia. Otherwise, we have legally, by all means, all the system, and only law enforcement. So these 4 or 5 things to be made in order to have better life, having all these mineral resources, developing bigger and processing deeper in that way. Otherwise, we cannot sustain this current situation.
This has been it for this week's Defacto Review. Thank you for joining us for this week.
Thank you very much for watching us. Please join us in a week at this time. Thank you.